Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Truth Proof live stream. Live again this Thursday for the Truth Proof channel. And welcome, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Les. And good to see you, mate. And another week, another Thursday. And we've got a great guest tonight. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Carl Crusher. But what you been up to?
Well, I've just been doing some more writings for the Ghost Tales. That'll be coming out as a series starting, I think, the 23rd of October. I think we've got one scheduled for, and from there on afterwards, on a weekly basis, hopefully.
Truth Proof's doing ghosts. We've never done ghosts, really, have we? UFOs, cryptids, well, everything, and it fits into narrative, doesn't it? But let's just have a look who's in this chat. Scott Lawrence, Bob, Mark McClinchley, Billy G, Mark Rhodes. Good to see you, Mark. Danny 2ME. Let's have a look. I know Linny's in. Olgie, Mrs. Linny's probably in. Peter will be in. Dave Barker, Karen Behrman. Hi, Karen. William Nielsen or Nelson. John Paul Body. Zero Dawn. Stargazer Eternal. Bernadette Lawrence. It's like a bingo calling match, isn't it? Jack Hills. Good to see you, Jack. And
brilliant.
There's loads more. There's numbers are rising, and I've probably said 30 people, and I can see that there's almost 100 in here now. So Rachel Martel. Thanks for that emailing week, Rachel, because it's kind of revamped what you sent me a few years ago. That's all. It's so interesting.
Steve, I'll just interrupt you there because we're going to get this out. The big news of the week is, and I'll let you announce it. I'll do the drum roll.
What is it, Les? Is it 12,000?
12 or 12,000 subscribers to the channel.
Well,
now we can announce now if on our Sunday's show you want to do a quick giveaway.
Yeah, we shall do that. Yeah, we shall be giving away books or DVD, whatever people choose if you win. So yeah, we'll do that on Sunday. But we're gonna have to get our guest on, Les, and yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I'll disappear. Come back with any questions, and don't forget all your questions in caps, please. I don't think Alison will be coming on as moderator until later on, but when she comes on, you'll see her in the chat. Without further ado, I'll remove myself and we'll bring in our guest.
Thank you. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Paul, and good to see you, Les.
Excellent. And thanks for joining us again, because I know you're so busy. And for those that don't know, who maybe been living under a stone, because Carl is what you would call a true boots-on-the-ground researcher, prolific researcher of the unexplained, gets to all the places where a lot of people would like to go and some people wouldn't want to go. So welcome, Carl. But before we jump to that, can we learn a little bit about Carl and the way or the reasons you're so entrenched in this subject?
Yeah, I've really been an experiencer my whole life when it comes to the phenomena, what people would consider encounters with supernatural or paranormal events, and seeing lights in the sky in association with that. And so I kind of grew up with it. But as far as trying to take it on full time as an actual explorer of these mysteries and of human consciousness and reality, really, I really started doing that full time about 5 years ago. And it's sort of like it unfolded into my life and became really prevalent again, and to a point where I kind of had to deal with it. And so in looking into my own experiences, that led me to places like Skinwalker Ranch, which is like the most popular TV show on the History Channel and on American TV. Yeah. And the government has spent decades there researching that location. And I kind of ended up on a pilgrimage of studying the ancient history and cultures of this region, and also the overlapping layers of the government involvement and how they've spent millions and millions of dollars trying to look into these same things. And so trying to find the common threads through all of that to make sense of my own life is sort of how I've become who I am. And along the way, I've always had this passion as a filmmaker to document my experiences. And I've never been good at keeping journals or writing books. And people tell me, oh, you should write an autobiography. And every time I get the sense to do that, I feel more comfortable just turning the camera on and doing video logs and going out, taking people on the experience firsthand with me. And it turns out that's really conducive to the scientific research. There's a lot of people that are still working in collaboration as private contractors with the government to try and answer these questions. And they need people like me who are willing to go into these areas, or who are our experiencers that are willing to publicly talk about the experiences and film them, and even go on to shows like this and talk about it without the fear of being embarrassed. So it's kind of become my whole life now.
Well, and what the gap then, Carl, between the early experiences during childhood, then obviously teenage years, adult years, bringing up family, I assume, to now, to 5 years ago? Was there a gap between, not a disconnect from the phenomena, it'll probably always been there ticking over in your mind. It was for me, put it that way, when I was bringing our girls up and trying to just forge my way in life. But then I came to a place where it's all like come back, and I've kind of reconnected with it even stronger. Did you find that there were a gap between, not between the phenomena, but between your active involvement in it?
Yeah, I think when I was a child growing up, it was hard for me to understand it. I was raised in the Mormon church. And so when I had encounters or experiences, I only had that framework or that understanding to try and deal with it and to understand what was going on. So usually that was not very helpful. I was just made to believe that I was doing something wrong, or I was attracting demons or evil things to happen to me because I was a bad kid or something. And so growing up, I really didn't have the tools or the understanding to be able to really sort things out. And so it wasn't until as an adult, when my father passed away, and right before that, when I left the organized religion, when I started trying to explore some of these aspects of my life. But when I was a kid, it all started when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and had like a full-blown, what you would call an abduction experience, where myself and a friend of mine were basically taken from the basement of his house and then put back on the wrong floor up in the kitchen, with a whole missing time in between. And then that led to a whole childhood of like sleep paralysis incidents, where I would wake up in my bed and be kind of paralyzed and have a sense of my bedroom, but I couldn't move or do anything about it. It was like half awake, half asleep. And there would be like an entity or a creature or something in the room with me. And sometimes that would be very terrifying, usually very terrifying as a kid.
I was going to say that. Was it full-blown fear that you felt?
Yeah, very terrifying. Even the initial abduction experience was very horrifying. And so as I grew up into my teenage years, I really tried to just suppress it all. Like when I would have an experience, I would wake up the next day and I would just convince myself I had a really bad nightmare or whatever, and I would completely ignore it and just go to school. And but there was a long time up until I was probably in high school, about 13, 14 years old, where I was a pretty strange kid. It was like I could see auras and colors around people, and I had no understanding of what that was. I could see sometimes what looked like light coming out of people's hands and going into other people, and just weird, like sort of psychic experiences and stuff as a child. And
do you still see that? Has that happened? Does it still happen occasionally?
It does. It's more intentional for me now, and it's more measured, and I am more experimental with it, kind of like an explorer of my own consciousness. So I utilize a lot of different meditation techniques, and like the Gateway Protocol from the Monroe Institute, different forms and variations of remote viewing and reverse remote viewing, different things like that. But a lot of it is visualization and meditation protocols that have allowed me to kind of get control over all this. So it's more a work that I do or a practice that I do than something that's just happening to me now.
So when you'd had an experience as a child, and you said you got up then in the morning and went about your day, went to school, just interacted with everybody, did the fear come onto you as night approached, as you knew it was time to go to bed?
Oh yeah. 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 Me and my friend were, we were kind of weirded out by the whole thing. We spent a good 8 months to almost a year. Anytime that we saw each other at school or even at church, we would kind of slip away in the corner and talk about it and be like, what was that? And try to ask each other if anything else had happened. And nothing ever really happened to him again, but he remembered everything. But I kept having these bizarre sleep paralysis experiences. And I mean, I'm happy to you share any of those stories. I'm not sure
I would love you to. Yeah. I mean, because we've got almost 2 hours. We've got, an hour and 50 minutes, so we can get to what they want to talk about, hear about Skinwalker and all these other locations. But I think this is good to get a grounding of why you're in the place you're at now. So yeah, please do.
Yeah. So like the common understanding when people talk about, UFOs, UAPs, aliens, it's this understanding that they're like abduction experiences are coming from outer space. Like these are flying saucers or spaceships that are coming down and picking us up and taking you up to another planet or up to their spaceship or whatever. And it was a little bit like that sometimes, but to be honest, the experiences that I had all growing up were much more like encounters with spirits or with the fae or like what you would consider elves or goblins and things like that I guess you would consider very similar to alien encounters. And a lot of the abduction experiences that I can remember are very similar to what you read in Whitley Strieber's books, very similar to I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Shaver Mysteries.
I'm not.
About the Darrow and the Tarot. It's kind of an older story. It was like fictional books that were written about a guy who was a real experiencer who had all these encounters with these like alien type of elf entities. So, anyways, so my experience really didn't fit. Like it didn't fit anything that you would see on TV as far as alien grays or mantis, but it's kind of this weird classification, almost like encountering goblins. So I'll just say it.
Well, do you know the book Night People? Is about my experiences, and I think I know I've put in Night People. I don't know whether they were aliens or demons.
Right.
I didn't know. I still haven't got a clue, to be honest with you. But sorry, go on, Kel.
No, yeah, it's so blended that way, even kind of strangely holographic and weird the way the whole thing happens. But yeah, it happened that my friend and our parents were both going to be out of town doing different things for work, and we didn't want to stay in our houses alone. So we had arranged for me to sleep over at my friend's house for the night, so we wouldn't be at home alone without any parents there. And so I went over to his house and we just hung out and goofed around the whole afternoon, talking about girls that we liked and different things. And then when it came time to go to sleep, when the sun was going down, we decided instead of like going into his bedroom, he felt bad about sleeping on a bed while I was like sleeping on the floor. So we both got sleeping bags and decided to sleep like in the basement area in the living room downstairs. And we were just in our sleeping bags talking, and he fell asleep while I was telling a story. And then like I started to fall asleep. And next thing I know, it's almost like someone had thrown open a window or a door, and suddenly there was like a wind rushing over top of me through the room, like a tornado going through the room. But it was weird. It was like full of this static electricity, like a weird feeling to it. And I like startled awake and looked over, and my friend was already sitting upright, like fully sitting upright, looking down at his feet. And it was like he was trying to yell and scream like he was scared, but there was no sound. Like I couldn't hear anything. It was just this noise of the wind rushing through the room. And I looked down, and there was this entity at his feet at the sleeping bag. And it was like maybe 3 feet tall, just this small thing. And it was it looked just like a little goblin.
Yeah.
And I say that because it had the eyes like an alien gray, like these black almond shaped eyes, but it did have a nose. It had like a long nose, and it had these kind of bigger pointed ears, like an elf. And it had no clothes, longer fingers. I can't tell you how many fingers it had on its hands. Like it was just like grabbing at my friend's ankles, like it was trying to grab his feet. And he was like terrified, and I'm immediately terrified at this, and simultaneously realize that there's a second one doing the same thing to me, trying to grab my legs. So there was one trying to grab him, another one grabbing me, trying to grab my ankles. And the color of the skin was like this, like a muddy, greenish gray color. Like the way I've described it is like if you take an egg yolk, if you boil an egg and it has kind of that green color on the yellow of the egg yolk, kind of like that, like a tannish green color, gray. And
was this in darkness?
Yeah, it was. There was like some ambient light in the room. I don't know if there was from the kitchen upstairs or what, but it was. I could see, but it was.
I've always puzzled how I could see when these things were happening when it were in darkness.
Yeah,
but just curious. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think the basement was necessarily pitch black. I'm sure there was a street light outside and light coming in the windows, and enough to where like it was like in my memory is it's all very kind of black and white and very like blue colors and things.
Yeah,
I don't remember seeing like a whole lot of color, like the lights were on, like full blown. But that's what I remember the color of their skin looking like and some of the details. But yeah, very kind of grayscale. But yeah, this thing was trying to grab my ankles and it's like its hands were halfway physical, but halfway not. So as it would try to grab my legs, its hands would pass through the sleeping bag and through my ankles, and I could feel it like a weird energy or like something trying to grab, but it's like it just wasn't quite manifest, or wasn't quite. It was like we were in two separate dimensions, and it was trying to pull me into its dimension or something. And behind the two of these creatures or these entities, it was like where the hallway and the bathroom and the bedrooms were supposed to be was just a big tunnel, just like this big dark tube that was going in and down like a water slide going in and down. And the edges of it were all like torn apart, like a vapor, like swirling around. And then there was a third entity that was up and behind the two of them, and it was taller, like it had longer legs and a longer torso, and it actually had like a pot belly. And this is where it sounds crazy. The whole thing sounds crazy, but it was actually wearing a loincloth, almost like a burlap apron, like a loincloth tied around its waist. And this thing was holding like a wand, like a magic wand. I don't know. I'm just telling the truth what happened. And as soon as I noticed all this, it was like all within probably 20 seconds or less. It's like suddenly it ended, like it was over. There's just this gap in time.
Normal.
Just turned off. And next thing I know, I'm laying on my back again. And it's like I'm coming back into awareness. And it's different than waking up. It's not like I was asleep. It's like suddenly I'm just somewhere else and I'm trying to figure out what happened, almost like you passed out. And so there's all this pattern of wood above me. I'm laying on my back, and it's like the ceiling is really low or something. And there's this metal rung and all these screws and different things. And it takes me a second, and I realize that now for some reason I'm underneath the kitchen table. So I'm on the wrong floor of the house. Now we're upstairs, and my friend's next to me in his sleeping bag still. And we're both, for some reason, underneath the kitchen table now upstairs. And I look over and he's already awake, looking around all confused. And he looks over at me, and the first thing that he says is, there was 3 of them. Like, because he remembered it all too. And so instantly I knew, like, it wasn't imaginary. I didn't dream this. Like, something happened, and we freaked out, and we like ran out the back door of the house and out into the backyard and turned around. And we literally just were like, there was 3 of them. Yeah, the 2 of them. There was one grabbing you, and there's one and it had a wand. And we both remembered all of it. We both had the full memory of all of it, except for that missing gap where it was like a blank out.
Moved floors kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you still speak with your friend? Have you spoke to him, or have the years just set you apart?
You know, he's still a member of the religion and everything, and has a family and kids and all that. And I've messaged him like on Facebook, and he definitely remembers it all. And his response is that, first of all, he says he doesn't like to talk about it because he doesn't want it to happen again.
And do you think it maybe conflicts with his belief system now?
Yeah, definitely. There's conflicts with the belief system and like what all of that means. And there was for me even at the time as a kid, you know. And we even went to church together in the same church group and everything as kids, and lived in the same block. And so it was very like a paradox for us growing up, trying to deal with that. And he kind of just suppressed it and didn't have any more experiences. And that wasn't quite the case for me. Mine experiences kind of followed me home, and I kept having a different variety of things that have made me since then turn around and try to finally face it and deal with it and understand what's going on.
Do you think that's the reason you try to visit all these places that've got a history of unexplained phenomena, not necessarily the type that you experienced, but just gathering knowledge? And and when you said it followed you home, do you think it's contagious then, Carl? Do you think that your experiences, if by you talking to me about it now, or to some other friends about it, they could perhaps have experiences?
I think contagious is kind of maybe the wrong word. I think what it is more that I'm learning, that as human beings, we are sort of like an antenna or a receiver. We're also like a capacitor. Our body is like a capacitor for storing energy and memories and emotions and things. And we, as a human consciousness, can sort of retune our awareness from our default mode over to these alternative signals. And so kind of like, you know, if we had like the old cars and radios, you know, that we grew up with, you tune into the radio station that you want to listen to. But as you're driving around, you sometimes pick up phantom signals. You'll pick up an AM wave or other FM stations that are nearby. So while you're trying to listen to one song, you get these echoes that bleed through. And I think some people are just born wired a certain way, or maybe their genetics or DNA hardwire them a certain way to where they're more tuned into reality a little bit differently to pick up those parallel signals. But I think as you talk about it, or as you're discussing it, or if you dwell on it or meditate on it and go into it directly, it's just like you're taking your hand and grabbing that tuner and you're changing the dial to pick up different signals. And so it's not that it's necessarily contagious, but it's more that you're tuning in your consciousness and awareness like an antenna to pick up those signals. And so it can attract it more into your life. And so
great analogy. So when you're visiting all these locations, before we jump to the ones that people know about, are there any places, and I don't mean secret places, but places that you visited or you're aware of that are just as active but not getting the attention? Are there any places you visited and you've thought, I'm here and I'm doing a bit of meditation, or this has happened, I've seen some kind of shadow being or anything? Are there locations that just aren't getting the attention that are just as active?
Yeah, and some of the locations that don't get the attention is for a good reason, and some of it is just because of the ownership of the land, or just to protect the artifacts there that are historical, that we don't want a bunch of people to go and ruin trying to explore. So there's some of that, but there's one location that I have worked quite a bit that I need to go back and do a lot more, that I've nicknamed, I call it the Magic Mesa. It has a different name publicly because there is like a local hiking trail, and it is known other people do go there. But I've given it a nickname, and I do go and I film some series there. And it was going to be an entire spin-off TV show that was going to be a cousin to The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the main one. Brandon Fugel wanted to film a whole TV show there. He was trying to talk to the owners of the property. We were lining all of that up. But honestly, a person died down there in the valley under really mysterious circumstances. I found, and the caretakers of the property discovered a ritual animal sacrifice that was put down there. And then all of this darkness started coming up, that told us not to go there and do the work. And so we had to last minute switch to a totally different location. And that ended up taking us over to Nevada, to the actual second Skinwalker Ranch that was owned by Bob Bigelow simultaneously as owning Skinwalker Ranch. So he owned two properties, not just the one in Utah. He had a second one in Nevada the whole time. So we ended up having to move it there. But that property at Magic Mesa is fascinating. It's full of ancient petroglyphs all over the canyon walls that are all aligned with the summer solstice and winter solstice, that when you go there in the morning on specific days, the light comes through the cracks in the rocks and tells the whole story of what the petroglyphs means, almost like a laser pointer going over the surface of the rocks. But at night, it's like the canyon down below, you can hear what sounds like I've been down there with my son and a group of other people, and it sounded like somebody riding by on a horse, like someone talking under their breath and almost whistling, rode right by us on a horse, but there was nothing there. It's just like a ghost going by. And these lights will appear on the side of the mountain and move around like glowing plasma. Balls of plasma come out of the ground and go back down, and all kinds of strange stuff that the caretakers of the property witness all the time. And then I've gone there and seen quite a bit of it myself. It's been a very fascinating place. Do you spend
nights there alone then, Carl? Have you spent nights? Yeah. Do you get scared?
Initially, when I first went and realized that there was something real to that place, it was scary. I went up there just doing meditations and kind of looking around and exploring the petroglyphs. And when I stayed after dark, I went and I sat on this rock that was like perfectly shaped like a chair. So I went and sat on this boulder and was looking at the petroglyphs and had like a whole visionary experience where it's like I saw my ancestors. I went through this whole out of body visionary experience with this, like a shaman figure, like a Native American shaman figure that was there. And I had to go talk to several of my Native American friends to even make sense of that. And so, I mean, that whole experience totally unraveled my life when I first went there. But I've gone back there ever since and had nothing bad ever happen to me. But I have had friends that I've taken there that kind of treated it sarcastically when they went, like it was a joke, and they've had very bad experiences because of that.
So do you think it's one intelligence that's there presenting as many things then, Carl, or do you think there's many things there that are all interacting, and maybe this thin area is where they're coming through? And if you're the right type of individual, you'll sit there with the right intent and you're meditating, I presume, and you've had these visionary experiences, where somebody else might go in, like you just said, takes it a bit sarcastically and just thinks it's all a load of rubbish, and they just have an adverse experience. What's doing it, do you think? I haven't got a clue. I'm just, I don't know whether you do.
I'm not sure if I know what it is. I think that we just I think that we in general have a fundamental misunderstanding of what reality is and how it works. And we're kind of coming full circle, even with this science, to where we're understanding how even just the fabric of reality itself is full of life and full of consciousness, and how much we play a part in that. So in a sense, like when we are in a dream at night, that just as another metaphor, when you go to sleep tonight, let's say that you have a very vivid, lucid dream, and you're dreaming that you're standing on the street corner of your childhood home where you grew up, and there's people there riding their bicycles and doing different things. And it doesn't even occur to you while you're dreaming in that moment that everything from the street to the corner to the house from your childhood to everyone in the dream is really made of you. It's made of your own psychic energy that has been inverted. So all this subconscious thought and subconscious memory basically inverts itself and becomes an entire realm that is a dreamscape that you go walk around and explore and even talk to other people. And unless you're practice lucid dreaming, in those dreams, you're fully convinced until you wake up that it's real and that you're there, and you don't even understand. It doesn't occur to you that you're in a psychic experience or dream. And I think that there's elements to all reality that we're going to discover are more like that than not. Yeah. And I think physical reality is just the other side of that coin, or the other side of that tapestry that we go in and out of from being awake to being asleep. But I think the rules of the game are fundamentally the same, but it's different when we're awake because the story continues. It's not so non-physical. We actually have a body. We have a house, we have a mortgage, we have the memories of yesterday and can keep the records and record it. And so there's science that can happen to compare the two. But ultimately, I think what we're going to discover, what the phenomena is that we're interacting with, like you said, these thin areas of reality that reveal to us the secret of reality, that it is more like a dream than we think. And that as we get into that, we realize that all of the phenomena is going to be other aspects of ourselves, and from parallel dimensions or from the future or the past, that kind of don't have to follow the same rules that we do in linear time. So it's a very complicated issue.
It's very complicated, but it doesn't stop us digging deeper or as deep as we can into it. Do you think, and without sounding too morbid, do you think that what you're searching for, what I'm searching for, and everyone in chat, do you think it exists and it's there after we leave this life, this physical life?
Yeah, I think that we're going to learn a lot more about that too. I think that even the phenomena that we consider a lot of the UFO, UAP phenomena, as science continues to peel the layers of that back and we realize what's going on, that it's going to contain a lot of the answers of what we consider the afterlife, these spiritual dimensions, and even where we go when we die. And when you look into most of the classic UFO stories of, what you consider alien encounters and things like that, even the old Betty and Barney Hill abduction stories that are so famous now, they all, when you really dig into those stories, involve the phenomena following them home, going into their dreams and having experiences where right alongside seeing extraterrestrials on the spaceship, there's the spirits of their loved ones that have been deceased. They'll see their grandpa or great grandpa or grandma, and they have a whole conversation. Now, whether that's an illusion to try and comfort them through an abduction experience or whatever, I don't know. But I seem to think, I'm starting to lean towards that there's more and more that we're going to learn about this whole phenomenon that's going to answer those age-old questions about where we go when we die and what happens to our soul when we don't have a body, and what does that look like. And I think that where we go when we die is a lot more personal and interactive to this reality than we realize and that we think, and is right here alongside of us.
Thank you. Jumping back to your childhood, you probably didn't think we'd dwell as long on your childhood interaction, but that bridge between the physical and the non-physical, when you perceived these beings trying to grab your ankles and somehow pull you. Do you think that was just to evoke fear? Because surely, if they'd have wanted to do this, if they could enter our reality, surely, I mean, I'm saying surely, and I've no idea, but you would have thought they would have just done it. They would have got, if they've got the means to show themselves and reveal themselves, you would have thought they'd have just done it. Do you think there was a purpose for doing that? Do you think the purpose was to have you visit these places later in life, to have you on this road that you're searching on now? What do you think the reason for it was?
Yeah, I think now the way that I understand it is a lot more, intentional. Like it was the whole path of my life is kind of for a reason. Now I don't like the idea of being like chosen or anything, or like I'm something special to these experiences. Like I don't necessarily agree with that. But I do think that since I've been able to talk to my Native American friends, and I've looked into my own ancestry, and I've gotten into reading about Norse mythology, and you read about the stories of the fae, the fairies, the Ents and the elves, and all that stuff that come out of the fairy rings and the stone circles and all that. And the truth is that when I get past my own projections of fear and the idea of like not having any control and being paralyzed, all that stuff is definitely like a trauma, but they still, they put me back, whatever it was, they put me back. And ultimately what it did is all of these encounters evoked in me a deep sense of this quest for understanding, and baked into me at a young age this unwillingness to just sit in church and follow along. It put in me a sort of a rebellious spirit that felt like there was a lot more out there. And this curiosity has become so much stronger than the fear, to where now my entire relationship with the phenomena and with those experiences has become completely the opposite, to where instead of going to bed at night worrying if something's going to show up to take me, now it's like flip the other way. I'm trying to go into these altered states of consciousness and into these locations like Skinwalker Ranch or Hessdalen, and to go right to their front door and knock. And I want to make contact and ask the questions directly, and even get it on camera and kind of unveil the whole mystery. And so down to the point that I even have a sensor in my house, a modular sensor that is constantly 24 hours a day recording the gamma radiation, the infrasound, the EMF waves, the atmospheric pressure, everything, so that if and when the phenomena occurs, or I experience something even here in my house,
detect something,
it captures it. And Dr. Jim Segala, he can measure all of that, analyze it, and put it together with the other participants of the study, and get results that this is a real thing.
Yeah, we've spoke to Jim twice on Truth Proof, and need to hook up with him again, to be honest with you, because he has emailed me a few times, and for one reason or another we've not got him back on, but we will do. But let's stay with Jim Segala then, and his detection equipment, his measuring equipment. Have you had any success with it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm technically a part of phase 2 of the study. So people who aren't familiar should definitely go watch those previous interviews.
Outline of what I'm just talking about, because you know more about it than me.
Sure. People should go watch the previous interviews on the show and catch up with Dr. Segala, or if he can get on, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But basically he worked as an intern for Dr. Hal Puthoff. So Hal Puthoff, he is basically the forefront when it comes to the bridge between the United States government when it comes to UFO crash retrieval and recovery programs. And he is also the founder and the originator of the United States Psychic Spy Program. So he was there clear back in the 1960s and 70s, and he helped found and begin the remote viewing program for the U.S. Army and the CIA. And he is also a physicist and engineer. And so was put on the task and worked with Bob Bigelow on these teams to go explore places like Skinwalker Ranch and Mount Wilson Ranch. And back in that time period, his right-hand man and one of his lead guys was Dr. Jim Segala. And he was like a technical a physicist, but also an engineer. So he could not only understand the science of the physics of what was going on, but could build these devices to actually capture the proof of it, depending on whether the phenomena appears in the sky or it affects you even physically, comes into your home or goes into your dreams or whatever. He could build sensors to measure that data and capture it. And so Dr. Jim Segala, he worked up around Skinwalker Ranch, which is this notorious location in Utah for UFO sightings, abductions, and paranormal activity on the ground. And they had a whole phase 1 of a study where they put these sensors on the ranch and in people's homes around the property, and then captured the data over maybe a decade. And that's a lot of the data that is in the sealed files revolving around Bob Bigelow's ownership of Skinwalker Ranch that everybody would like to know. Well, the reason it can't come out is a lot of it's medical records.
Yeah.
It's from people's private homes and things. And so they haven't signed off permission for that data to become public. But since then, I've worked with Jim Segala, and he asked to put a sensor in my home after talking to me with some of the experiences that I've had. And then that sensor is all part of phase 2. So now I'm an active guinea pig in phase 2 of this study. And all this data ends up going back to Washington, D.C. as part of this disclosure process. It's also part of why they know that there's associated effects to the brain that they call interference syndrome. People who have contact with the phenomena have different markers in their brain, in their frontal lobe and hippocampus, and different things that are different, almost like their antenna is wired different inside the brain. But anyway, so this sensor is in my house. So now when I go to a location like the Magic Mesa, I have an experience or see something. If I come home and it's like I have one of those sleep paralysis incidents where I wake up and it's like there's a shadow figure in my hallway of my house, or the door opens by itself, or something strange. Instead of just waking up and having a story to tell, I can get online, log into the website, the MUPAS website is what we call it, and check the data. And sure enough, be like, yeah, right around 3:30 in the morning, there's this huge spike in gamma radiation and microwave radiation. And even the GPS got confused and didn't know where it was for about 20 minutes.
I've just written GPS there on that bit of paper. I was just going to ask you, but let's do some else. We'll talk about GPS anomalies in a moment, but carry on, please.
Yeah. So it's like these anomalies are recorded on the sensor that is impossible for me to fake. Like I can't generate a gamma wave and send it across the house from my dreams into the sensor. That's, according to Dr. Segala, that is something that is coming into my home, and then I'm having this experience as a result.
So Carl has the experience, the data registers the difference in basically you, or is it the atmosphere, things within the home as well?
Yeah, like you can literally see like a spike.
And it punches that data through to Jim Segala, yeah?
Yeah, there's even been times where I've woke up the next morning and been like, wow, that was a crazy night. And then I look at my phone and Dr. Segala has already messaged me because he got the alerts. So he'll get an email telling him that my sensor is hitting certain markers, like I'm having an experience. And he's even messaged me before and been like, wow, last night, did something happen last night, before I've even been able to get online and check. So I don't know. That's
well, as a study, it's brilliant, but it I suppose, Carl, it needs not that yours isn't worthy, but it needs a lot of people to take part to reveal the pattern, I suppose, doesn't it?
That's the goal, is actually to get multiple members of the study, and not only in people's homes that feel like they're experiencers, so that they can get that validation, or at least feel or go get the help to find out what's wrong if it's not the phenomena. But on the other end of it, we can put it in locations as a permanent sensor, which is part of why, like, I went to Hessdalen. It's like a whole community out there, an entire valley that is full of people who have seen lights in the sky and things come down on the ground, coming out of the water, going around their house and even in their house. And so the opportunity to put sensors in people's homes there and camera systems there, we could actually track and follow the data to where we could see that, okay, at 2:00 in the morning, we got this phenomena appeared on these cameras. We filmed it coming out of the lake and going in the sky and going over to this part of the neighborhood. And then we can log in and say, we have 3 sensors over there in the houses or in the community. And we can even see that the phenomena moved from house to house. So from 3:00 to 4:00, it visited all 3 people or something. And we might be able to capture that data and then also get the journal entries of what they saw and what they experienced, if anything, when that happened.
It'd be brilliant to see if there's a ripple effect from location to location, you know, the hotspots all around the world. I know it's probably long-term goals, but I bet that's ultimately part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Being able to
house to house. Can you imagine if things were kicking off at Hessdalen and suddenly you've seen spikes at places like Skinwalker, or you were in the Hoyabaku Forest or Bempton? Do you know what I'm saying? All the places where things happen.
Yes.
But it's having enough, I suppose it's funds as well. It's not just having the equipment, but it's funds as well. I don't know what the amount of money to invest in it would cost. It'd be quite substantial, I would think, is it?
We've basically figured it out now to where we have the portable sensors, and Jim's even developing, and we're testing out a watch that's wearable. So you can even take it like camping and everything with you and wear it. But the idea is to make it affordable, and we're doing it crowdfunded. So like, Paul, if you wanted to get a sensor, the idea is you could go, and this isn't to try and make a sales pitch. This is
we were talking about it, so you just push it, Carl. It's good. We talked about it with Jim when he were on last, so
yeah,
it's good.
The idea is that you would go onto my Patreon page or the Moopos website, whichever one you wanted, and then you would order the device for yourself, or make the donation for a location like Hessdalen or another spot. And basically, you would get the device sent in the mail and could hook it all up. And then there's a monthly subscription that goes on after that allows you to log in to not only see your data, but all of the other public sensors. So you could see everything happening in my house. You could log in and see the 3 sensors that we're putting up in Norway, and even watch the cameras and read the journal entries and be a part of that whole research team. So like, I've even had members of the Patreon notice spikes on my sensor in the house and then message me through the website. Did something happen last night? And I have to tell them, no, I just unplugged it and moved it across the house. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Things like
they're on it, aren't they? They're on it.
They watch it. Yeah. And as we evolve the sensors and they get better, and the project gets more, we have more monthly subscribers. The great part is after you've become a subscriber, those funds just are all going right back to Dr. Segala and putting the sensors in the location. So there's more places to log in and look at the data. So like, it would have been amazing when last time I was there in Norway, we had multiple things that we saw in the sky, and I was able to film a lot of them with my night vision camera. But if we would have had the sensors set up, and if the blue box wouldn't have been under maintenance, we could have had like 4 or 5 different layers of evidence to prove what we saw and what we filmed, rather than just a story, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where we're at now. The technology is catching up with the phenomena to where we're going to be able to start to provide more evidence.
Well, I looked at some of the stuff that you'd filmed with the Psionics black, weren't it? I think that's what you were using, weren't it? And although it's grainy because it's only 720p or something, you're still managing to see in the dark. And what were your conclusions to these flashes of light that flared up at Hessdalen? Was it a regular occurrence, or do you think they put these shows on for the people who are actually there? Do you think it'd happen if you weren't there?
I think it's going on when I'm not there too, yeah. But I definitely think there is something connected to when I really am a believer at this point now, to where there's an involvement and an interaction with human consciousness, to where there's a type of meditation that you can do that's almost like bird calling, or almost like, you know, or chumming for sharks, whichever way you want to look at it. But I almost think that there's a way to tune in human consciousness, either by yourself or with a small group, that kind of evokes a response, or somehow they react to it or hear it. And I can't explain that part of it, but I do think that they're there all the time, and they do know what's going on. The experience that I had up there at Hessdalen was literally like, we were asking it to appear. We were all looking at the Big Dipper and the North Star, specifically meditating and asking something to appear.
So was this audibly or mentally you're asking it?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
So even because I'm filming on camera, I'll even say it out loud at the risk of embarrassing myself. I'll even say, can you appear in the sky? And but behind the scenes, even when I'm not filming and I'm not talking out loud, in my subconscious, I'm going very clear. So instead of there being like thoughts in my head, I am going into the space in between the thoughts, this emptiness and this openness. And then I'm visualizing exactly where I'm standing on the banks of the lake, on the cabin. And I'm projecting this image out like a beacon into space and into where I'm looking up towards the North Star and the Big Dipper. And I'm basically inviting anything that can hear this frequency or wavelength of consciousness to come and appear or whatever. And that if it's okay with being on camera, we would love to see it, you know, and we'd love to let other people see it. And this whole kind of intention and positive visualization is going on in my mind, but there's really not a whole lot of thoughts going on. I'm not having a lot of mental chatter. And then sometimes I'll say it just out loud on camera, just so we can prove it, you know, because a lot of times, right when I ask and right when we say, or right when you put it out there, it's like these things will appear and they will glow and flash, and it'll be like a shooting star, but there's this whole plasma trail, and it will turn and bank 90 degrees, make turns in the sky, almost like a hummingbird flying around. And we even saw one come down and hover above the mountains. And then it was like, it was like something, a ball of light down in the trees, moving and teleporting around and scanning around in the trees. And then it jumped across the lake closer to us. And then it was like a whole block of plasma. It was like this wedge of light just floated through the trees and up the hill. And I have no idea what it was, but
so did Hessdalen live up to your expectations, or were you thinking to yourself, no, I've experienced loads of things, been to loads of locations, this is as good as anywhere you'd been?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was telling Chris Lato and everybody there, I was like, this is in the top 5, everything I've seen and experienced, like, and caught on camera. This is amazing. And yeah, I was pretty blown away. It was the first time I'd ever seen the Northern Lights and the aurora, and just the amount and the volume of the stuff that we saw in the sky that night was another level. It was there was a lot going on.
You even visited hell, didn't you?
Hell, yes. Yeah, I landed and went right to hell. Yeah.
What did you think to hell?
Yes.
You better tell them because people will think we're talking about something else.
Yeah, the first town that I met up after landing in Trondheim at the airport, I got picked up by Fred, and we went to a town there in Norway, a little city with the mall, and had a lovely breakfast. It's a beautiful town, but the town is called Hell. Hell. They even have a big sign. They're very proud of it.
Do you think, Carl? Because I think there's we'll not go to questions for another 5 minutes, but do you think, because I know there'll be some about Hessdalen, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but do you think when you take certain individuals to locations, broad brush stroke here, you kind of know when something's going to happen, and when you get there, sometimes you think this is just flat, nothing's going to happen, these people have gone in with the wrong mindset. Does that occur to you at times?
Yeah, I've been to locations where after like the second or third day there, it's occurred to me that they're literally hoaxing, and that everybody there is sort of in on a delusion, or there's nothing going on there at all, literally faking things to try and get another season for a TV show or whatever. Yep. I've been to places where they're straight up lying and faking, and where they claim they've got tunnels going down into caves underground, they don't. And they're completely hoaxing all that stuff. And as soon as I point it out, or I start making phone calls and having a problem, or taking pictures where I'm not supposed to, they kick me out immediately. Yeah, because I refuse to fake or lie. Yeah, and
you know,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, and I've gone to real places where I've taken people that think it's a joke, and then they've gone home early, very sick or hurt, or I've had friends literally go through a mental health crisis, and severe mental health crisis, where they were institutionalized for a short period. The whole gamut of things happen to people. And so I've taken people that thought it was a joke into real locations, and then they've ended up suffering consequences because they were sarcastic about it.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was going with question. So, at the beginning of that one, because I always cite this, a good friend of mine, Lee Haywood, and I don't know whether you'll ever get over here, but if you do, I'd take you to this location. And took Lee was skeptical, but in a good way. Just analysed everything and thought he were going to find an explanation for these spheres of light that we're all banging on about all the time, that just seem to be manifesting. They're not flying from anywhere, they're just appearing. And on the field, people will be rolling their eyes saying, he's always on about this. But I'm blown away by it myself. I turned around to speak to him, and there's a huge sphere of light in the field with us. And I don't mean 20 foot away. I don't know, 80 foot, 100 foot away from us, but it's huge. Lee said the influence the light was throwing off was as big as a Volkswagen Beetle. And it was so orange. And I'm swinging the camera around to film it. And as fast as I'm doing it, it's just imploded and gone. But I believe that Lee was the reason we saw that. I don't know. I'm never going to have the proof of it, Carl, but I do believe that Lee was the reason that I got to see that. We've seen loads of things up on these cliff tops since and before, but nothing as spectacular as what I saw with Lee. And so that's probably where I were aiming it when I said, do you think when you take certain individuals out with you, you kind of, you know that something might happen. They've got the right energy, the right vibe about them, the right frequency that they're giving off. And other people, it's just going to be flat. Nothing will happen.
Definitely. And I've even been in experiences where I was the humbug, right, where I was the one that was being skeptical. And then I ate my own words, and I found out later I was wrong. And the group that I was with, I was kind of chuckling to myself, like, these ladies are far out. We went to Mount Wilson Ranch one time. I got a phone call. The owner of the property called me and was like, hey, there's some witches up here. I said, what? He said, there's a group of ladies up here who want to do a seance in the diner or in the saloon. And I was like, wow, I want to be there. I don't want to take part in it, but I want to film it, if they're okay with me coming and filming it. And the whole time I was super skeptical and like, whatever, these old ladies are just here doing their thing. But I wanted to document it just because I thought it was interesting. And I was the one thinking it was kind of silly. Yeah. And I mean, if you fast forward now 3 years later, everything that she said in that seance has come true. I'm not even really, even the direction that she pointed when she said there's a tunnel underground, like a shaft, like they found it. I mean, there's definitely have found evidence that that's all come true.
Was that more clairvoyance then, or were they seeing it in another way?
Right. That's why I'm kind of like, I think different people have different kinds of packaging, but underneath it, there's something real going on with human consciousness and reality that we don't understand. And it might look like magic or witchcraft or something, even demonic, but it's really just a phenomena that we have a lot of prejudice wrapped around, that we really don't know what it is. There's something real to our human ability, human consciousness and telepathy, clairvoyance, remote viewing, and just our ability to communicate directly with physical reality itself is something that I think we're kind of evolved to be blind to. And we're kind of stepping back into this awareness, like coming out of a cocoon, and we're realizing our true potential. So, I was the one looking at them like they're witches doing a seance, but ultimately the mechanism of what they were doing isn't all that much different than like a peaceful Buddhist meditation that I'm doing in my own bedroom. Though it's just the packaging over top.
Makes perfect sense. And Carl, we're getting towards 8 o'clock. Are you okay? I'm sure we're going to have some questions. If we give Les a shout and see if we can go through a few questions. And people are going to want to watch what you're putting out on the YouTube channel. So let's not forget that. Hi, Les.
Sounds great.
Yeah. We'll put your socials and your YouTube channel in tonight's description of the show, Carl. So anybody who wants to pop over there and watch all this, do it after you've seen our show, folks.
Yeah, and I see we've got Alison in moderating. Thanks, Alison. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Alison. Yeah. Question from me, Carl, actually. First off, is that Hessdalen lights was primarily seen over a 3-year period where there was more prolific? Was it in the 80s?
That's according to the, when you go on to the official website, you can go to the old website that has all of Erling Strand's work and a lot of his documentation. And it seemed like there was a big spike in activity and research over a certain period of time. And then there was a lull in that activity. And some of that honestly could have just been people becoming more aware of what satellites are and being able to filter down a lot of the misidentifications to what's really going on at a real level. But when I went over there, my experience was that as soon as I landed and was with Fred, and when I started meeting the locals and getting their trust and sharing my story, the amount of people that came up and told me stories like this was an ongoing thing was, we couldn't get away from it. Even when we went up to hike around to look for these old Viking mines, we weren't even looking for UFOs, UAP, or any supernatural stuff. We kind of got lost in the forest, and a local guy came out of his cottage and caught up with us and told us where to go. And I just asked him, have you ever seen any strange lights in the sky? And he was immediately, oh yeah, and told us a whole story. He didn't let me film it, but told us a whole story about how they see these lights come down out of the sky or out of the lake and go up the mountain and move around like someone carrying a flashlight, but they move so far, so fast that it's inhuman. It's not possible that it could be a person walking, it's like they teleport. And so he told this whole story. And so I feel like my experience there was as soon as I got there on the very first night, I was blown away at how much I even caught on camera and what I saw with my own eyes. I just think there's a lot of people that don't actually go and take the equipment to do the work. They just experience the phenomena and they keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move on with some questions from people in the chat. And our first one is from Lee Roscoe. Lee, great supporter of the show. And the question is, what has Carl brought back from Hessdalen Valley in Norway in mind and thoughts?
Honestly, the realization that I had coming back from Hessdalen was I have stumbled into this whole line of scientific research that I realized was going on behind the scenes that I was unaware of, that is a part of looking into a new form of life in the thermosphere of our atmosphere. Basically, it is non-biological extraterrestrial life that is conscious forms of plasma. And so we have plasma is technically the fourth state of matter. And what these researchers, and there was some of the scientists and physicists were there at Project Hessdalen, and they even gave presentations. And after meeting them and going and looking at their scientific papers, I was blown away. There's dozens of major universities and physicists and astrophysicists that have been working on this. And basically what they're realizing is that something is happening in the upper atmosphere outside of Earth. There's the magnetosphere, magnetic shell around our Earth that protects us from solar rays from the sun and from solar radiation and cosmic radiation. And when our Earth gets blasted with this cosmic radiation, it swirls into these eddies of radiation in the thermosphere. And they're realizing that these cosmic dust particles, literally crystals that are floating around in outer space, start to form in the thermosphere into these balls of plasma, or these plasma shapes that form into geometry that even resembles DNA and RNA. And then it sort of pops out of the thermosphere like a cell. And some of them can be as small as a ping pong ball, and others are as big as a kilometer, or they're as big as a football stadium, and they emerge like a life form. And they're capturing evidence, scientific proof that these things are flying around in the upper atmosphere, and they can even form shapes that appear like triangles, geometric shapes. They transform into squares and cubes and triangles and pyramids. And they even fly around in formation like a wedge of lights, almost like the Phoenix lights. And they've been capturing evidence of these things all coming down onto the ground, into the water, coming out of the ground, and especially up around where the Aurora Borealis is in the Northern Lights. And so to me, this overlapping layers of realizing how much the science going on behind the scenes is starting to give us answers as to what this is and what it could mean about us, maybe where we go when we die, and what that is, what ancient people thought were star people or angels, and all this is literally almost like a new discovery of a form of life or afterlife that we really are just starting to come to terms with. But it's like you can go to Hessdalen and see it and observe it, almost like you would go to a bird sanctuary and see the rare birds. It's really, really a magical place.
Okay, I've got a question thanks for that, Cal.
Yeah.
Karen Beeman, great supporter of the show. Cal, what's your preference of wearing for your protection or connection with all you have around you? What's your preference for protection?
So sometimes, depending on where I go, I will go all the way, like you would say, tinfoil hat. So there's times like when I go up around government locations near Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, or some locations where I know that there's a lot of radioactivity or radiation or ultra low frequency technology there. They have EMF protection beanies and hats and even baseball caps that you can get online now. So I have a variety of those. And so I usually, sometimes when you see me in videos, even in the summertime when I'm wearing a beanie, it's because it's lined with EMF shielding, like a Faraday shielding. And you can even get blankets and different things. My friend, Brent Stone, he has multiple PhDs, but he makes these devices that he calls a halo pulse. And it's just a necklace that you wear, you can put by your bed. And it basically puts out a counteracting frequency that's like, you can't hear it or feel anything, but you can change the settings and it will basically put like a bubble of electromagnetic field around your body to kind of shield you from any kind of bad radiation and energy. But there's only so much that you can do. A lot of what I do now is spiritually and through my meditation work, where I guard myself that way, and I do things to protect myself as far as that goes. The necklaces that I always wear are really just kind of reminders. They're trade bead necklaces with Native American friends and family members that I've made friends with, that sometimes when I go places, I'll make a necklace and then we'll trade beads with someone while we're hanging out, sharing stories. So I'll wear the different necklaces and they just have different reminders and meaning to me. And also the tattoos all have different spiritual significance and reminders to me of my journey and path. But to me, they're all just totems and placebos to just remind me of what I need to do internally. I don't know that they actually do anything real, more than just they are conscious reminders of the work I need to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Karen. Ben 22. Carl, have you been hypnotized to find out what's happened during the lost time?
Yes, I did do a hypnotic regression one time. And after I did it, the lady quit. She refused to do, she called me, she sent me the video of the recording of the hypnosis session. And to me, everything that came out in the recording wasn't anything new. But she quit doing hypnosis and she was like, I don't know how much of this is real or if this is even fake or not. And she quit doing hypnotherapy afterwards. So I don't know if that's what she said, but nothing really new came out. It didn't really lead to any revelations about the time that I was taken when I was a child. The experience that I remembered during the hypnosis was one from when I was in my own bedroom in my own home, where I remembered waking up in my room. It was one of the more traumatic ones. And it was like I was paralyzed. And this is where the hypnotic regression, for some reason, took me to this experience. But it was like there was an old lady in the corner of the room. And she was like, it was like she was outside the window looking in, except for my bedroom was on the second story of the house. So that was impossible unless she's like flying or hovering out the window. And then it occurred to me that maybe she wasn't out the window. She was in my room and I was actually seeing her reflection in the glass. So she's actually next to me. And I thought she was out the window, but I was really just seeing her reflection in the glass. And that freaked me out because all of a sudden I realized she was in the room with me. It was like this old, like a witch with long hair, like with rags on her, like she was wearing some gown or something. So the hypnotic regression took me back to that memory, and then how it transitioned to like I had an out of body experience where it was like I could see myself in the bed below and I was floating above my own body. Like I was out of body looking down at my own room at the floor. And then it was like I was on some kind of a craft, like a room made of neon light, like a hologram. And there was like a box over here into the wall. And there was a table in front of me, and these windows that you could almost see out like into outer space. And it was very psychedelic feeling and stuff. But yeah, I recounted that in the hypnotic regression was like I went there, and then it was just all these questions, why am I there? And it was like I go here all the time. And it's like, what are you doing here? And it's like it's just who I am. And it's all the strange, vague answers. When she tried to ask me, who brought me here, I said my family. For some reason, I said my family instead of it being aliens or whatever. I said my family, and that was strange to me.
Did anything profound come out of it? Did you think when you were listening to, I don't know, the recording backwards afterwards? Was there anything that you said that you thought, Christ, I don't remember any of this. I've got no knowledge of any of this.
The part about the family came out strong. Was like that was kind of surreal. Like that made sense to me, but it was something that I think I was resisting up till then. And then I think there was a part there where I said, I go here all the time. I said, I go here all the time. And they said, who takes you there? And I said, sometimes I go on accident. And I literally said, like, sometimes I accidentally go here.
No, by accident.
Like I end up here on accident. Like the the other beings or entities or whatever's there are surprised sometimes when I show up. And that in the hypnosis actually made me laugh. Like I was laughing in the hypnosis on the video. I started chuckling like that was funny. Right. Like I accidentally go there all the time and I'm not supposed to. And that was an odd thing to me.
Yeah. Thank you.
But also made sense too, like to some of my experiences.
Okay, I got a question from Gavin Still Crazy. Hi, Cal. Have you had experiences with shadow beings?
Yeah, I would say most of the encounters that I've had started off as a shadow figure or shadow being, or the impression of it being a void or a shadow entity. And it wasn't until I got over like the initial fear of the encounter that I realized it was something else. Even down to ones where I've had experiences where I thought that I saw my own father who's deceased and things like that. In the initially is kind of a terrifying thing. Like there's just a shadow entity there.
Yeah.
until you peel back. It's more like, I think we're the ones who have a problem with focusing our vision than it is that they're really a demon.
Do you think that's the intelligence, the unknown other, influencing you and trying to make you think it's your father?
It could be that too. I mean, I'm very honest, even in the work that I do with Dr. Segala, that like when I have an experience that feels just like it was my dad, like I'm talking to him again, like there's always that skepticism and that immediate, like, was it really, or is this the trickster? Is this an entity that would be a very powerful thing to do to try and manipulate me, to get me to persuade me to do something? If something could appear as my father or a spirit or my grandfather or even like an angel or something, if I had a strong religious belief system, it could be very manipulative if I started doing what it said or something. You know,
it's kind of a game changer, isn't it? Because it could lead you on a path for years before, you know, the true realization came through. It's frightening.
Yeah, some people do. Some people chase it down a path and it ends up sort of betraying them. You see it in stories throughout history a lot of the time. You even see it in religious history and
UFO cults that
UFO cults, and even magical history, like in the formation of Enochian magic with John Dee and Edward Kelly. I mean, they were trying to use crystal balls to talk to entities and aliens, and by the end, they were both in prison, having affairs with each other's wives and trying to run away as fugitives. And sometimes it just tears your life apart if you get manipulated by it. So yeah, be careful. Don't just trust that it is your dad.
Yeah,
Some of the experiences, you know, you just have to take with the paradox of not knowing.
Yeah. Okay.
Go on then, Les. Hit us with another.
I know we've been talking about this as the show's gone on tonight, but a question from David Bancroft. If there's anything more you want to add there, Carl. Question for Carl. What was your trip to Hessdalen like with fellow investigator Chris Alito like?
That was awesome. I wasn't sure if I was going to end up going on that trip alone or Chris was going to get to come, but Chris was how I actually met Dr. Segala to begin with. And so he has done some work over there in Norway, working on a underground USO, one that's might be hiding on the bottom of a lake bed up there. Wow. And so they were doing deep water scans and things like that. So Chris had already been there once before in the wintertime working on it. And the opportunity to take some of Dr. Segala's sensors and install them up in Hessdalen was like really exciting for me. And I was like, how do I not go do that? That's like such a cool adventure. So as soon as I got the opportunity, this is my first podcast doing from my new house. I sold my other house, moved into this one. So that I could go debt free. So I don't have a mortgage. I don't have any payments or anything anymore. So my whole reason for doing that was so I could travel and not have the burden of paying the mortgage. So as soon as I got moved in, I hadn't even unpacked my boxes yet. And Project Hessdalen, that whole convention was going on, and they invited me to come. And I was like, if all I have to do is pay for the flights, I'm going to go. So I got the tickets, and
Well,
And then
yeah.
Chris lives over there and showed up. And unfortunately, the sensors didn't show up in the mail in time, so we weren't able to install the equipment. But I was able to take the night vision. If you go to my YouTube channel, I think it's on episode 4 is my whole trip there. They let me film everything. And so if you want to see all the weird phenomena on the night vision and stuff, the most recent video just went up last night. So you can go watch everything from that whole trip to Hessdalen.
I've watched 1, 2, and 3. Really, have you watched them, Les? Really interesting.
No, I'll be going straight after the show, and I urge anybody after the show to go and have a look at these videos. Right then, this is kind of a question for what you can get into, Paul. David Barker is asking, the phenomenon in Hessdalen looks like the lights at Bempton, North Sea, Yorkshire. Do you think they are linked?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead. You know,
I'll take it. Well, I do personally, and Dave's got reason to be asking this question because he's had, to my knowledge, incredible sightings of these things. But he lives in a prime location that's overlooking the sea. Well, on both occasions. So yeah, I do think it's linked, Dave. And I couldn't help when looking at Carl's YouTube channel and 1, 2, and 3 Hessdalen, which I've had a look at over the last few days, thinking there's so many similarities. And I did say to Les, I'm going to send you some footage that I want you to play, and I've not got it to him. So yeah, we'll have to do that because I'd like to show you what we've been filming there. And I know Pete will be watching this, and Lynn is in chat, and there's a group of people going up there tomorrow with me. And we're seeing these huge flashes in the sky. We're seeing the orbs of light, not just in the air, but on the ground. Daylight, sort of light flashes that are turning night to day, all sorts of things. So definitely similarities, Dave. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Carl, because I know you've not gone into what we're looking into as much as what I've been looking at your work.
I think what David's kind of alluding to is that I maybe need to come over there and work with you guys once and capture some of it, and we can compare it all, huh?
You would find it interesting. I mean, I did an interview with George Knapp, and George likened it to the Skinwalker of the UK. You know, and I've done a few with him, and he's seen some of the stuff that we've been putting out there. And I'll tell you what's interesting. You were talking about this living plasma. I know it's questions, Les, so I'm not going to dwell on this. But 22 years ago, my first website was ILF UFO, and I named these things ILFs, intelligent light forms.
Yep.
And because there was some kind of awareness, some kind of intelligence to them. So we were probably on that page back then, although the Hessdalen guys were there doing it all, weren't they? But it's intelligent. It could be intelligent light, plasma, for want of a better word. It's presenting as light, isn't it? But anyway, let me stop and let's get to questions.
No, I think it's great. I think I need to come over there. Yeah, when I was in Hessdalen, that's what impressed me, was how the presenters that got up and everybody that I met, they were from the UK, from Germany, from Ireland, even from Ukraine, and everybody was telling the same stories. And I think when you get a country and a group of people, eventually there's going to be a localized hotspot where you realize there's a neighborhood over here where people are experiencing things up here and witnessing it. And it's
well, do you know, Carl, a good friend of ours has been on channel, Philip Kinsella. Philip's just come back from Norway. And he's coming through to see me. He's coming on 2nd of November, and he's going to stay for 4 days with his brother Ron. And we'll be getting to these locations then. But it'd be interesting. I'm not sure where he's been in Norway, but anyway, we'll cover that one.
Sure.
So go on,
if you do decide to come over here, Carl, you might find the airfare a little bit cheaper as well. So
yeah, probably
more of a reason to come.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So we've got a thanks, Karen Beeman, for the monetary support tonight. Thank you, Karen, as always well appreciated. I've got a question from Tony and Morrison. Carl, are you interested in alien and cryptids, or mainly alien? Also, when you're at the petroglyphs, is the energy earth-based, or do you feel it in the air?
That's a great question. Yeah, I am interested in the cryptids. One of my first breakthrough experiences before I really started exploring it seriously, I got invited just as a filmmaker to go film for a Bigfoot documentary. So in California. So there was a group filming a documentary about Sasquatch and Bigfoot in Northern California. And so I went on that trip just thinking it would be fun, and had a totally terrifying paranormal encounter with this giant shadow creature in the dark in the trees up there. And this thing turned and ran away from camp and went into this pack of, or like this pile of brush where these manzanita bushes were growing. And then like a few hours later, from that spot, we saw a ball of light, just like what you described, like the size of a beach ball. Like this ball of light floated up out of the ground, out of the trees, and then hovered over us and went over the mountain in the distance. And I have no idea what that was. And that completely shook me and traumatized me, because I was up there looking for Bigfoot, you know. And I was even joking around in my videos on the way up there. I was like, oh, if I meet Bigfoot, I'm gonna offer him a candy bar and we're gonna become best friends. Like, it was funny. And then when we had the encounter, it was not funny. it was absolutely scary. And I was still even a member of the Mormon church back then, and it completely rattled me. I had no context. I was like, what am I doing up here in the mountains with this creature? Like it absolutely shook me. And I sat up on the side of the mountain, like after that night when we had the encounter, when the sun came up, half of the film crew got in their cars and left. Like, they're like, we're not staying up here. And they got out. And I sat there against the side of a tree and almost had an emotional breakdown, because I was like, how is this real? How in the world did I come up here thinking this was a joke and then saw that? Like, how, like, it hit me in the face so hard that I was so wrong about all this stuff and that it was not a joke. And I went home after that trip, drove all the way back home, got my whole family together, my mom and my brothers. I was like, I got to tell you what happened to me. And I told them what I saw on that trip to California. And in the middle of that story, telling them what happened, I looked up and saw their faces. And I realized, I was like, oh, great. I'm one of those people now. They were all looking at me like I'm insane, like I've lost my mind. I was like, wow, this is what it's like to be an experiencer. I was like, okay. It's like, well, I can't deny what I saw, what I experienced.
Is that a part of the phenomena that you want to delve into more at some stage? I know you've got loads on at the moment. And
yeah, I think, to me, the way I look back on it now, I mean, because I was up there looking for Bigfoot, I mean, even the guy that had originally had the Bigfoot encounter that we were up there to film the documentary with, I've talked to him since, and he's been like, looking back on it, I don't know if it was like an ape or like the boogeyman or like some kind of just an apparition, because he doesn't even know. And to me, it all relates back to the same Skinwalker phenomena. And Skinwalker is even a nickname, just like Bigfoot. You know, these are nicknames for this paranormal phenomena of these shadow figures or creatures or whatever that seems to appear in these spots where reality is thin. It's like you see the UAP in the sky, there's weird interaction, and then it's like something from a parallel dimension or from the basement somehow crawls up from the basement and sneaks onto our level of the house and runs around for a little bit. And so we have this weird overlap of phenomena. It's almost like creatures from the past or this other weird subdimension bleed through into our reality, and people see it or witness it.
I would agree. Okay, Les.
Not a question for Cal, but I'll put this on the screen for you, Paul. Joe. I would love some Wolflands mugs. Have you any, please?
I think we've got some, Jojo. Just send us an email or message me. I'm saying I think. That's not meant to sound... Well, it does sound vague, doesn't it? But I think we've got some. Yeah, I think we have.
I think this one's for you, Carl Rachel Gold. What did the church say about your experiences?
So the context that I had through the church was that basically shadow figures, the goblin, that type of interaction, the sleep paralysis, I was all raised under this understanding, and even with stories from the church, where that's like demons or evil spirits. So the context that I had was that before we were born, they call it in the Mormon church, the pre-earth life, that there was all of us spirits and that we were in heaven. And then before we came to earth, there was some of us that wanted to go along with God's plan and other spirits that were rebellious and didn't want to go. And so we were all sent here to earth along with the evil spirits, but the evil spirits just never got a body. So they're sent down here with the devil to basically tempt us and torment us. So the context that I had through religion was when I had these encounters or these abduction experiences with it, these were those evil spirits or those demons or Satan's minions coming. And the only reason that they would be coming to do that would be because I had done something wrong. I was a bad kid. I had either thought a bad thought or sinned, or I'd hurt somebody. And so I grew up with this just a sense of guilt and shame. And when these experiences would happen, I just felt like I deserved it because I had done something wrong. And this was happening to me for a reason. And so the church never really gave me a lot of context. I've had other family members that have struggled with the same phenomena. And basically what happens is, in my family, it wasn't that big of a thing. Like, I kept my mouth shut when I buried the experiences, but I had family members that tried to, go and talk to their dad or talk to their mom, like my brothers or whatever. And they would just try to pray over them, or they would try to do spiritual blessings or healings and different things that they do in the church. And all of that was honestly just ineffective. None of it ever worked. None of the prayers and none of that stuff ever worked for me. Until as an adult, when I got, and this, I'm not even trying to talk bad about religion. I'm just telling my story. Yeah. It might be really helpful for some people, but it was useless for me. When I got out of the organized religion and I started going directly to the ancient petroglyph sites, going directly to things that in the culture seemed like the phenomena was openly talked about within the religions and the beliefs and within the culture and the rituals that they were doing, it was more accepted. Like, Native Americans dress up like these entities and praise them and consider them ancestors from the stars and beneficial. It's not a demon, totally different angle. So once I started looking into it as an adult, my entire perspective changed to where I have one of these experiences at night and I can call my friend Roger on the phone. He's from the Re-indigenizing Minds Project. He's like as Native American full blood as you get from New Mexico. And he'll just say, oh yeah, that's this guy. And he almost knows their name, like of the entity that came into my room. And that's Eotoi. He's the maze walker. He's trying to teach you how to control your out of body experiences so you can travel through these dimensional doorways better. Oh, that would have been nice to know as a kid, who that was. I just thought I was a bad kid, so it's taken me my whole life to sort this out. But that context and being able to tell that story, I think, is helpful for a lot of people that might be struggling with the same paradox and that same trouble, where they've only been taught certain things of how to understand it. And you have to really overcome all your prejudice and fear and you have to really learn to love yourself and realize that you're not, there's nothing wrong with you. I've had to go and work with actual physicists and scientists and go to places where the government's been to finally get my answers. And now I'm confident talking because I have the validation and the support around me to speak out and to talk about it.
And what a relief, Carl, when you actually it's almost like coming out. It's maybe the wrong word to use, but when you actually started speaking about it openly, probably before you even, were you already doing the podcasts and going to these ancient places and talking about what you were finding and the artifacts before you started talking openly about your own experiences?
I think it kind of both unfolded at the same time. I really buried a lot of this stuff. Yeah. I grew up going out into the woods and doing a lot of things alone. And I think when I look back, I did make a lot of private attempts to understand myself. I spent a lot of time in my youth and through like my early 20s, where I would just drive up and go like lone survivor and go camping in the woods alone. And I don't even know what I was looking for back then. But when I moved down here to southern Utah, and after when my father died and I went through a divorce, it was like I finally had the mental space and the freedom and honestly just the alone time to where
discover it yourself,
to discover it again. And not only that, like the phenomena kind of started unraveling in my life again and sort of led to me getting divorced. Like the things that were happening in my house, I would wake up in the night and me and my wife, literally like there's a poltergeist in the bedroom and she didn't handle it well. You know, I was trying to make sense of it. I started exploring meditation and trying to sort it out. And she just didn't want anything to do with it. You know, what is going on? Yeah, just understandable.
Can we hit you with a few more questions? Are you good for questions, Cal?
Sure.
Wait, Paul, or do you want to carry on with a little bit more?
Okay, let's just move on a little bit then, and then we'll come back last 10 minutes or so for questions, if that's okay.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Yeah, all right, Les, thank you. You touched on the cryptid phenomenon. I said, is it something that you want to explore a little bit deeper? Obviously, when time allows, because I bet time's pretty short, isn't it? I bet your life's pretty full on. But the lights and the cryptids, do you think there's a connection?
Yeah, I think even in the UFO hotspots, when you actually get to those locations and you talk to the people, it's one and the other. They both go along together. When you get there, every single spot that I've been also has legends of some kind of a cryptid or shadow figure thing or an entity, whether it be the Skinwalker, the Wolf Man, the Dog Man, the Mothman. I mean, they have, you go over, you know, to Ireland and around in Scandinavia, and then you have the Fae. And then, so when I look at these experiences that I've had through my life, I honestly find it more difficult to fit it in with what media has told us as it being like from outer space with flying saucers.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense when I look at the indigenous stories. I look at the ancient history of, oh, these druids were building stone circles, and then these elves or fairies or whatever, these light beings would come out of the ground, and that was their spiritual interaction. And what it is or exactly where it's coming from, I think we're still trying to sort it out. Is it possible that these extraterrestrial plasma beings from the thermosphere can come down and mimic us and pretend to be different things and appear to be
things, yeah.
Can they look into our thoughts and kind of interface with our consciousness and then appear as some kind of a nightmare figure based on our own expectations or things? There's all of that is in the conversation. I've been at Skinwalker Ranch and had these exact same conversations with Eric Bard in Skinwalker headquarters. How much of this is the phenomena basically coupling with our own subconscious and then manifesting based on who we are and appearing to us based on our expectations and things like that, almost as a response, which is why at the beginning of this whole interview, I related that to being like a dream. Becomes very dreamlike. How much of this is made of my own psychic energy and how much of this is real?
Totally on the same page as you there. Absolutely. I had an experience as a child where I woke up and it was day. It was very early morning and it must have been summer. That's all I know. Because like we said, we don't keep diaries when we're a child. And these beings, these entities were stood at the bottom of the bed. And I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. I turned away. For what seemed like ages. I'm trying to rush it because it's about you, Carl, but it relates to what you've just said. And when I turned back, I was looking at pictures from my mum and dad's wedding album. Not pictures, a row of people. And there was my grandparents, and there was other people from the pictures of the wedding album. And it was all, I've said in Night People, it were almost as though whatever it was that were interacting had picked through like a filing cabinet in my mind and give me something that would pacify me, because I'd seen the wedding album, I'd seen this row of people, obviously looking at mum and dad's wedding album, and that's what it became. It was just a thought, just when you just kind of echoed it there, that are they Are they giving us what we kind of what's in our psyche, what we're thinking about? And I think there may be a lot of truth in that. Maybe that's why the cryptid sightings and the werewolf type sightings are so terrifying, because we may be going in with that expectation, with those thoughts in mind that we might see something, and the narrative from the movies, the horror films, is it's something truly terrifying, and that's what we're seeing. Who can say?
Right. And think of that, even going back to that metaphor of when you're in a dream. If you are in a dream and the entire environment is made of your own psychic energy, then the entire environment, everyone and everything in that dream is made of your thoughts and is responsive to thoughts. So if you're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I hope there's not a creature going to come up the basement stairs, immediately the creature or the ghost appears and is chasing you, and you still have no idea, and it doesn't even occur to you most of the time that you're the one that did that to yourself, you know, and created that reaction. And I definitely think there is some kind of a manifest reflex that happens, and it gives off this appearance or the interaction occurs in such a way that it is like a telepathic precognitive communication that occurs, from the lights in the sky to even the phenomena that appears and how it appears to you. There seems to have a relationship with knowing who you are at a deep level, and giving you these synchronicities and coincidences and these patterns that you can even unfold in your life that can be very surreal. Even the subtleties of the day-to-day of your life, it might not be like there's a full-on poltergeist, but the way the coincidences occur and the synchronicities occur to where you, like you said, you turn around, there's the picture of mom, and right at that moment, something falls off the shelf that your mom made you, and then someone calls and mom's sick in the hospital or something. And there's these weird nuances that make you feel more like the world is really made of magic.
It is interesting, isn't it? You know, like another analogy is, I don't know, you suddenly start thinking of a friend you've not seen for 10 years, and you walk round a corner and there they are. What's happening there? These synchronicities, these similarities, and deja vu. Have you experienced deja vu?
Absolutely, all of that. I think it's just apparent that I think our human consciousness, we've been taught and raised, our entire generation especially, that our mind and our thoughts and emotions are like an energy contained within our skull, and that it's something that happens just within the fatty tissues of our brain. And the truth is that our consciousness is a field of awareness. It's a field of consciousness that extends out beyond us in these infinite ways, meaning that even to the point that your visual spectrum, when you look up at the night sky and you see the stars and the moon, your conscious witness of that is the existence of that star and the existence of that moon as it resonates through the awareness of the universe itself. And I think we've lost context to that, and we've lost the awareness that everything that you see as a border or a barrier or over there is happening really as a witness of consciousness inside ourselves, as the seer, as the one experiencing it. And so everything that's happening apparently outside of us is also simultaneously happening within us. And they have these sayings all written in the old esoteric books, like as above, so below, and as so within, so without, and all these hermetic teachings that reflect that same principle. And when we look into the science behind it, we've seen the same fractals throughout math and music, through the study of frequencies and reality and radiation and everything. It's the same kind of pattern. And we're just kind of realizing all the magic of those similarities and what it means to be a human.
Do you think there's been a move in recent years away from the kind of these intelligences are coming from outer space, from the distances of outer space, and now people are realizing that whatever it is that's interacting is here and around us? Because that's how I feel it is. Are we talking portals, other dimensions? I don't know, but I don't necessarily think it's coming from outer space. That's not to say when you look up there and see all that something couldn't be coming, but I think whatever it is already here. Just on a different channel on the radio, like you were talking about earlier, than bleeding through.
Yeah.
And do you think, have you seen a shift? Do you think people are coming around to that way of thinking more and more now?
Definitely. I know even when I started doing this, even just 5 years ago, and a lot more podcasts and stuff, even just 3 years ago, when I first started doing these interviews, even the concept of talking about remote viewing or telepathy, or that they could understand your subconscious mind, that whole conversation was not happening. The idea of all of that was barely going on. It was still like, where are they coming from? Are they coming from Zeta Reticuli? Are they coming from Orion's belt or the Pleiades? And it was literally, a division in the awareness. And but here's what's fascinating, though, is that when you go and look at all the actual experts and their books, when you look at what, like Robert Bigelow said, and Jacques Vallée and John Keel, a lot of those guys that were supposed to be the ones disclosing things about UFOs, they would put flying saucers and say UFO and everything right on the cover of the book. But when you go and read the book itself, it's way more full of in your house, in your living room, abductions at night, paranormal shadow figures, creatures on the ground, things coming out of the lake and out of the mountain. And there's very little talk of them coming from space, very little conversation of them coming from outer space. And when you extend that back into the ancient cultures, you realize that whether it is the indigenous tribes of North America or South America, or over to the UK or Ireland, Egypt, and ancient Sumeria, you see these threads that go throughout all of it. Like, this has always been a part of our reality, and has mostly, you see the major cultures of our planet building entire civilizations trying to interface with the phenomenon, trying to interact with it, or to make it an official part of their entire belief system and culture in all sorts of different ways. But that's why you see pyramids that are built the same in these structures all over the earth, because there was
the world,
phase of humanity where it was actualized.
So when we're looking at the different genres of the unexplained, then, Carl, like the UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, do you think, I'll say it out openly, I believe it's all linked. I think there's a thread of the same running through it all. Do you think that, or do you think there are separate? Because I think it's wrong. Or in the past, it's been, I study UFOs, and there's no time for people who want to talk about cryptids. There's no time for talk about people who want to study ghosts. UFOs is my thing. And I think we were missing a trick, because within a UFO report, there might be some element that's connected to another part of the unexplained, and that's really regimented. And I think we've just got to join forces and accept that there's a common link. Are you on the same page there?
Definitely. I think even if the UFO phenomenon, the UAP phenomenon, was spaceships coming from outer space, the science says that the only way that they can get here is if they're traveling through alternate dimensions or parallel dimensions, or using quantum portal technology in order to do that. And even if it is spaceships from outer space, the side effect of those craft coming and interacting with our planet and with people here is going to leave a wake, almost like an echo in time. Even if it was a physical spaceship that came and flew over Nevada and left, the echo result of that could be some sort of a strange quantum entanglement that shifts our perspective of time, or the way that we experience the past and the future, to where these weird cryptids come right through. So even if you take it as a scientific thing, like technology is causing it, there's still plenty of room for weird stuff to exist, for these strange giant wolves or primate things coming through from the past or other dimensions and slipping through into our timeline, even if it is a technology. But I think that the phenomenon, my experiences with it, are much deeper than that. And the technology is just a piece of that puzzle. These crashed UFOs and things are just things like potentially from parallel dimensions or the future. But now I think the conversation is way more heavily, especially with these whistleblowers coming out in Congress, and you hear their personal stories and everything, and you look at the actual evidence is way more down on the ground and the separation between the lights in the sky and the ghosts in your bedroom are not that separate.
No,
it's really not. And even when you go back and watch the old Steven Spielberg movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that whole movie starts with the little kid's bedroom being haunted and the toys coming alive and moving around. Everybody forgets that. You know,
we're probably gonna. We'll come to Les in a moment. We'll just treat this as first question, and we'll keep these tight because we've got about 10 minutes. Excuse me. Different equipment, say Skinwalker Ranch, Mount Wilson Ranch, EMF meters, tri-field meters, even the use of a Ouija board. What kind of success have you had, or what's been the best method or the best piece of equipment that you've simplified for anybody in the field who wants to go out to an area where they think things are happening? What would you recommend?
I would say at a bare minimum, you should have some kind of a night vision camera that can record video and audio at a certain level so that when you see something, you can film it. But for your own validation, you should have a radiation sensor, like a Geiger counter, and an EMF sensor so that you can separate the difference between underground power lines and radiation or man-made technology and something anomalous that shouldn't be there. Yeah. And if you can expand off of that, you can go get multiple other handheld pieces of equipment now to thermal imagers. You can get handheld like laptop infrasound equipment. You can get EEG sensors that you even hook up on your head to measure your brain waves if you want to get into the consciousness research. But when it comes to just like actually getting the evidence, now it's all about like investing in better and better night vision cameras.
Yep.
Ultimately, I've had to take that step to where I've partnered with like Dr. Segala, and we have the whole modular unidentified phenomena alert system, which is a whole cluster of all of those sensors crammed into one device. And then it's live tracked and part of the whole official study. So you can go portable and carry your personal things in your backpack to get evidence, or join the MUPOS team and get a whole sensor and become a part of the study. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Les has put the links to that in tonight's show. And let's just pull Les back and we'll have 10 minutes of questions if that's good, Carl. Yeah?
Yeah, great.
Been brilliant. Thank you, Carl. You've made it so easy for me tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Brilliant show so far tonight, guys. Really enjoyed it myself, and I know most of the people in the chat, if not all, have enjoyed it extremely.
I'm sorry about this backlighting back here too. I haven't got my curtains hung up in my new house yet.
No problem.
We'll have it figured out.
Well, well, at least we don't see any underwear.
I've still got boxes of stuff behind me here.
So your boxes on? I thought you were going to say.
I'm still out of boxes. Yeah.
Okay. Quite a long question, this one. If we can get through this one from Kim King. Carl, did the experience encompass waking active times as well as sleep modes? If so, how did the incident present or manifest, i.e. passing through a wall? Any sound accompanying?
Good question. So one of the experiences that I can say that I know went into the actual MUPOS study that I logged in as a journal entry, Jim Segala messaged me and was like, whoa, what just happened? It was an incident where I was awake, standing in my kitchen, and I was on my phone actually, and I was talking to a Chinese linguist, a lady named V Duo, and she is helping look at the similarities between petroglyphs from the ancient Indus Valley, northern India, Pakistan today, but back then just the Indus Valley, ancient Tibetan monks, and these ancient petroglyphs and how they match with some of the ones here. And she made this connection between this Emperor Yu of ancient China, and she mentioned the pace of Yu, and it evoked this memory of something that I had read years before on this in this book about meditation in ancient Asia, about the pace of Yu being this time travel ritual that had to do with the North Star and the big star and these stone circles on the ground, how they would do a ritual around these stone circles. And this shaman would go through time travel, would teleport through these stone circles and reappear in other places and teach other people. And so I was kind of chasing this story around. I was talking to her on the phone. And at the same time, I started getting messages from my friends in New Mexico who are in the Navajo and Hopi tribes there. And they start telling me these same stories of the Spider Woman, these Navajo legends of this mystical doorway in New Mexico. And then at the same time, I start getting these messages from Chris Bledsoe, who's was studied by NASA and the CIA as an abductee and someone who actively does meditations and sees UFOs and has paranormal encounters all the time. He's been heavily studied by the government and researched as a paranormal experiencer. And all at the same time, all three of these groups start messaging me and texting me. And then in that exact moment, it's like I had an out-of-body vision where I was in this canyon meeting this deity figure, this woman, like that Chris Bledsoe writes about in his book. And it's like I have a whole visionary experience. I don't have to go into all the detail of, but next thing I know, it's like this vibrating feeling, pulsing, boom, boom, boom is going through my body, and it centers down in my heart, and my heart's like pounding in my chest. And then I realize I'm like holding my phone, but my phone's timed out, my screen is off, and I'm just standing at the back window, just staring out the window, like up at the clouds. And there's been like 45 minutes that I can't account for of like missing time. And I was totally awake, standing in the kitchen, just like had this vision. And I was immediately able to go right into my office, log on the MUPOS device. And sure enough, there's a whole wave and gamma radiation, infrasound, EMF, and everything all at exactly the same time. So I'm able to type in the whole experience, send it all to Dr. Segala, and that's like an exact example of a daytime incident that would occur, like a massive amount of synchronicities lining up into like almost an out-of-body experience where it's like my consciousness is taken somewhere. But as far as like seeing things like orbs and shadow figures and entities in the daytime, physically apparent, it's usually a weird out-of-body transition that occurs, and then I see all of that stuff. Like I tune out of this physical dimension and then experience it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't put Debbie's question up because we covered it before. Debbie was asking about what protection you take before going to these locations. If you just rewind the show, Debbie, Cal talks about it earlier on. And I'll put this on. I only do that because we are short of time. Rachel Gold, how would Cal's sleep paralysis experiences in the study compare to regular sleep paralysis?
I'm not sure. I think that's yet to be seen. I don't know if anybody else that's participating in the research right now has the same experiences and can verify that. But for me, it's been very validating to have the sensor, so that when I do have an encounter or experience, or even when I'm doing the meditation, I can double check, what was real or what wasn't or whatever. And some people might not like the answer to this, but I think that even people that struggle with certain diagnoses of mental illness like schizophrenia are going to eventually benefit from this technology. And over time, we're going to realize that the human brain has hypersensitive awareness to other dimensions of reality that we might think are just hallucination, that maybe necessarily aren't just a hallucination, but something actual.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think probably the last question tonight goes to Gavin Still Crazy. Hi, Chris. Have you had any succubus, if the pronunciation is correct there? Have you had any experiences in that regard?
I've had one experience. It was like energy vampire type experience where I had the sensation that there was an entity in the room. It was vivid enough that I was able to even sit up in my own bed. So even physically was able to push myself up and was sitting up in bed. And then what it was like something was behind my back and was trying to put its arms into my arms to use my body like a puppet. So it was like trying to put my hands onto its hands like gloves, like it was trying to get inside my body. That's the closest thing that I could say was like being
Possession.
aware of some kind of a succubus type entity, something trying to get into me or feed off of my energy in that way. But not, I haven't had anything like sexual or anything like that occur.
No.
It's just been psychic. Yeah.
I was hoping to listen to some juicy reports there.
I have no memories of getting probed.
On that note, we will have to end the show, Carl and Paul. And thank Alison for doing the moderating in the latter half of the show. Thanks, Alison. Thanks for all the questions. I apologise for all the questions that I didn't get read out tonight. And I think, Paul, just on the side note, Joel might be telling you some things. And I suggest, Joel, I know he put some questions in tonight. Perhaps you want to speak to Paul in an email.
Messages Joel, and we'll have a natter, and that's good. And there's loads of people here that we didn't get to say hello to earlier. Martin Abbas, Dean Cooling, Karen Behrman, Lee Roscoe, Mike, Disabled Welshman, Tonya Morrison, and a doorbell.
Carl, thank you very much.
That was me. Sorry.
No, it's no worries. All good.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carl.
Carl, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you all. We'll see our regular viewers and newcomers to the show on Sunday.
Yeah,
excellent.
Bye.
It's my pleasure.